Hello and welcome to IPSE Live. The Chancellor, George Osbourne, has just delivered his final budget before May's general election, and in today's episode we'll be taking a look at the announcements he made and how they affect independent professionals. With me are IPSE's policy team, Simon McVicker, Director of Policy and External Affairs, Andy Chamberlain, Deputy Director of Policy and External Affairs, and Jordan Marshall, Policy and External Affairs Advisor. If you have a question for the panel or any comments on the Chancellor's budget, tweet us using the hashtag IPSE Live. So Simon, let's start with you. First reactions, was it what you expected?
Yes, it was by and large. I expected a very political budget. George Osborne's a very good political tactician, and that's what we got. First of all, he took on Labour Party in many areas of their policies and spent the money in different ways, targeting people like pensioners and middle-income people, which are much more likely to vote Conservative than Labour, and so therefore he was very clever in what he set out to do. But he did some good things for business as well, and I think that the small business community will be pleased with what they got today. And
he said before the budget there would be no gimmicks or giveaways. Did he stick to that?
Well, I mean, it depends what you define as a gimmick. These set pieces are always full of gimmicks. There were a few, and there were some terrible jokes.
The two kitchens being one of them. And Jordan, were the announcements made today enough to keep the economy on the right track?
I think the tax cuts across the board are very much welcome. So as expected, we had the rise in the personal allowance, but we also had the 40p threshold increase, as well as tax cuts for savers and for home buyers. So I think these things will all help to boost economic growth. My only concern is how they will be funded. So the Chancellor committed to running a surplus by 2018. So with all these tax cuts and departmental budgets like health and education ring-fenced, I find it difficult to see how these commitments will be met.
Mm-hmm. And the ONS labour market stats came out today, including an increase in self-employment on year again. This was good news for the Chancellor, wasn't it, today?
Yep, so the self-employment are key in the economic recovery. Since 2010, a third of new jobs have been self-employed, and today we saw that women are leading the way. The growth in self-employment for women is 4.9%. There's more women in work than ever before, and self-employment is absolutely key to this. The one issue with the recovery so far has been stagnant wages, and the key to addressing that is tackling our productivity, which is one of the lowest in the developed world. So the investments in infrastructure we saw today, particularly with the North Sea oil and gas package of 1.3 billion, will go a long way to consolidating the economic recovery.
And Andy, the Chancellor said the budget backs the self-employed.
Yeah.
What was in there that directly affects independent professionals?
A few things actually. So I think that, to pick up on the last point Jordan was making, the figures today couldn't have come at a better time for him. You've got record numbers of people in employment, and this is when you're about to stand up and give your last budget before an election where you've been promising the world that everything's going to be great. Now you've taken over the reins, so that's helpful. And as Jordan said, the self-employed actually make up a big part of that. And I hope and like to think the Chancellor, when he said that, he was saying thank you to the self-employed, because when I promised everyone the private sector would pick up the jobs I'm going to cut in the public sector, I didn't actually know how it was going to happen, and the self-employed have come to my rescue. So that was handy for him. Yeah, there's a few measures in there. The oil and gas measures are going to be very helpful for that industry, and that industry is largely run by people who work as contractors or self-employed people or independent professionals. So it's a very, very important boost. I have to say that the problems they face up there are quite serious, so the government may need to continue to help them. But 1.3 billion package of measures that are announced today are going to certainly help. And other eye-catching measures were abolition of Class 2 NICs for the self-employed, which is a big deal. It's more of a simplification than a saving, probably. You're talking about saving 140 odd quid a year, which is very helpful to some people, but perhaps not the be-all and end-all. But the fact that you don't have to worry about doing it anymore is probably the main advantage. And this abolition of the annual tax return, we'll have to, I think that sounds like a very positive step. We welcome the announcement, but how is the new system going to bed in? Is it going to work? Is that going to be, we have to wait and see how that happens. But basically, yeah, we welcome that announcement. Can I go on one more other thing? One other thing quickly. Just one thing we're concerned about, though, travel and subsistence consultation was slipped in there. we are concerned that that needs to be handled very carefully by the government. And we, in fact, Simon, I know, has already spoken to a senior HMRC official about this, and we are going to be very carefully monitoring what goes on there, feeding into the government, discussing it with them, because if that's not handled correctly, it could have a very negative impact on genuine businesses.
But didn't the Chancellor say in the budget that genuine self-employed professionals would be protected from
Yes,
this?
but how the devil is in the detail. How is that going to happen? We need to make sure that there's not a huge burden of proof on contractors to show that they are genuine. And we know from experience that these things can be fractious and difficult, complex, cause lots of confusion. We want to keep that to a minimum. So just that I think that's the one thing there's a little red flag there. Just so we're keeping our eye closely on that one.
Okay. And is there anything you'd like to have seen?
Well, I thought they might announce a cut in corporation tax. What he actually said is we're not going to raise it like some other people in this house would like us to do. We're going to stick to our plan to keep it at 20%. And to be fair, it's not bad. I mean, it's one of the lowest rates of corp tax going. I thought that he might do something a bit eye-catching and say, and we're going to go further, and we're going to cut it down to 19 or 18 or something like that.
But his real eye-catching measure was the raising of the 40% threshold. That's the crucial one for him as a Conservative. This is middle-income voters, aspirational voters. They've taken the brunt of this austerity, and he needs to get those people back in line. These are the people that made Mrs. Thatcher have 3 terms in the 80s. And that's what that was about today. However, 50 days before an election, is it enough time? Are people going to say, oh yeah, I feel much better off now I've got this? Or are they going to think, no, this is too little, too late? That's the big question that comes out of today's budget.
Okay. And in terms of back to what directly relates to independent professionals, I mean, Jordan, is there anything you'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean, I was slightly disappointed that there wasn't any action on late payment, because this is something the Conservative Party has talked about before, and it's an issue which 85% of SMEs suffer from. So I'd have liked to have seen George Osbourne back our plan for a small business conciliation service to resolve disputes. But hopefully that will be in the party's manifesto in the coming weeks.
Well, they have the party have pledged to do it, haven't they? But as a government, yeah, they have done a bit on late payment. To be fair, they might have done a bit more today. They didn't, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
In the run-up to the budget, there was a lot of talk about business rates, wasn't there? Was there anything in terms of work hubs that cutting?
Well, I think what they've announced is a review of business rates,
okay.
and I think that we, as IPSE, would have to make the business, the work hubs, part of that review. But there's nothing specific in the budget about that today.
Yeah. And what about infrastructure as well? What did he say about infrastructure?
Well, there's always a lot on infrastructure in the budget. One of his big ideas is the Northern Powerhouse. There's also plans for a new rail franchise in the southwest, where there's lots of marginal seats. There's obviously plans for road expansion. There's lots. We'll have to look through the Red Book to really get a sense of that.
What he didn't talk about was, of course, airports and the vexed issue of where the new runways will be in the south.
Absolutely.
And that's the big thing looming for the next government, whoever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He also didn't mention, unless I missed it, home building, because this was something that people thought might come in. They might be a commitment to build X number of homes, 100,000, 200,000, whatever. And this is, again, another industry which is very important to the UK economy and largely run, managed and serviced by self-employed people. Yeah. So I was sort of a bit surprised that something wasn't said about that. Perhaps it's in the Red Book. I haven't had a chance to check.
Yeah, I think it's a line that the Labour Party will use to attack the Conservatives, that the cost of living is going up. There is not enough affordable housing. So it was slightly surprising that they didn't commit to more in this area.
Yes.
Okay. And Simon, as this was the last budget before the general election, I mean, the pressure was on the Chancellor. Do you think he delivered?
I think that Osbourne is good under this sort of pressure. I mean, he's done it so many times in the past. We all remember when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister and looked as if he was heading to an election victory, an early election victory. Osbourne pulled out of the hat the inheritance tax and raising the threshold to £1 million, and it stopped Brown in his tracks, and Brown never recovered from that. I think that today's performance was a good performance. I think business liked what he had to say. I think he will be popular with middle income earners. But is it going to change people's minds? Is it going to get the Tories up from that 32, 33% to 36, 37, 38? That's the big question, and I don't think I can answer that at the moment. We'll have to just wait and see.
Yeah, it was
Andy?
definitely more of a sort of he was going for the overall message, as everyone said it would be, is look, we're doing a good job with the economy, stay on track, don't change things. That was he didn't, I think rather than going, here's a big gimmicky idea for you all to run away and get excited about, he's going for the, look, I'm a prudent, cautious Chancellor. I've been doing a good job. Things are starting to get a bit better. I can throw a few little things out there. The raising of the 40p threshold is actually quite a relatively big deal.
The other interesting thing is he was promising the second half of the next Parliament, if these policies continue, we'll be in surplus for the first time in 18 years, and we'll have made a good recovery. But it's only if these policies continue.
Okay. And Jordan, what was Labour's response to this? What was their main?
Well, their line on spending being cut to 1930s levels was slightly preempted by the Chancellor not being as austere as had been expected. But they were still talking about the cost of living, the bedroom tax. I think the lines for the general election have been drawn. The Conservatives will continue to talk about their long-term economic plan, and Labour will talk about the NHS and how that's under threat if a Conservative government is elected.
The one thing I feel that Osbourne did do today was, Labour have been talking about austerity, but less painful austerity. And in a way, Osborne's taken that away from them, because he actually gave a lot of little goodies out today and took the foot off the brake a little bit. And I think that's going to be difficult for Labour now, because what more can they do without going mad in expenditure terms? It's a difficult one for them.
So you think this was a very tactical budget?
It's totally tactical and totally was out to shoot the Labour fox.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the start. This is the start of the election campaign proper now, isn't it? This is the setting out. This is us. That's them. These are the differences. We want to make you know that we're all about the safe pair of hands to the economy. Labour will go on about the NHS, which they did in Prime Minister's questions, if anyone catch that before the budget, which, you know, they calculate that the country thinks that they're a safer pair of hands with the NHS, and the Tories calculate they're a safer pair of hands with the economy, and those are the two things that the two parties will go on about. And we'll have to wait and see which is the more successful. But I would say that probably if you're in the Tory shoes today, you'll feel today probably went better for you than if you're. I think if you're Labour, they looked a little bit panicked to me, the opposition front bench. They didn't quite know how they were going to come back against it.
It is the beauty of being in government. I mean, you can do things which an opposition can't do, and the opposition is sort of victim to whatever the government decides to do with the budget. And it wasn't a giveaway budget in the way that maybe we used to have before general elections. It was guarded, and there was little goodies here and there, and little micro things that will help certain parts of the country, which might help some marginal seats. But, you know, it was all coated in this: we are guardians of the economy, we are sensible, we are not going to go back to Labour's recession. It was called Labour's recession.
Okay. Okay. So obviously, you said this has kicked off the general election campaign. Really, what do you expect to see before the 7th of May? What can we expect now?
Well, probably they. I mean, Linton Crosby, the Tory strategist, it's quite an open secret that he says just talk about the economy and nothing else. If someone asks you a question on the NHS, just reply, well, it's all about the economy, stupid, or something like that. That's all that you do. So I think that we're just going to see them sticking to that plan. Will David Cameron go on TV in a debate? That seems to be what everyone's obsessed with. I think he probably will do that. So we might actually see some kind of TV debate at some stage, and that might lay out for everyone a bit more what the differences in policies are. But I think we're beginning to see some quite clear differences in policies now between the two main parties, certainly. So yeah, that's how I think it will go over the next couple of months.
I think the election could all come down to Scotland. If Labour wasn't going to hemorrhage dozens and dozens of seats, they'd probably be looking at majority. But the SNP is looking like taking 50 odd seats. So hung Parliament's inevitable, and it comes down to
Jordan's always been
who will build a coalition.
Jordan's always been very optimistic about Labour getting a majority. I don't think a Labour majority was ever on the cards. I think Labour are now fighting to see whether they can be in government with another party. I think the likelihood is it's still going to be a Conservative government of some sort or other.
Okay. And Jordan, just what do you think about the Greens and the UKIP, the smaller parties?
Well, they're obviously not going to win many seats. The Green will probably win one. UKIP might win a handful, but they could take away votes from other parties, which could be crucial in marginal seats. With all the polling data that's available, there could be a lot more tactical voting and sophisticated voting. So it's going to be very exciting.
Do any of you dare to predict?
Well, I think it'll be a Conservative-led government. They probably won't get a majority, but they could be in some sort of agreement with the DUP and UKIP.
Do you agree, Andy?
I don't know about. Yeah, I mean, I think that I've always thought the Tories might just edge the most seats battle, but I think they're going to struggle then to get enough seats with other parties because the Lib Dems, who are their sort of current allies, probably aren't going to get that many seats. So even with them, so they will then perhaps look to the DUP and UKIP. But do they want UKIP in their party? Because that will cause them all sorts of trouble with all their backbenchers who want to get out of Europe, and they'll all start. You can see them all, walking to the other side. And I think that if I was David Cameron, I wouldn't want to go anywhere near a UKIP coalition at all.
I didn't say coalition.
Oh well, okay, yeah, some sort of confidence and supply. I'd be weary about being reliant on UKIP if I was David Cameron.
I think the problem is that somebody has to form a government, and if the Conservative Party are the biggest party, and clearly the biggest party, they will have to form a government.
It should be them
that
do
it.
it.
It is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Exciting times, but I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Thank you to Simon, Andy and Jordan, and thank you for watching. Join us next time on the 8th of May, the day after Britain has gone to the polls and decided who will form our next government. We'll be discussing what happened and what it means for independent professionals. See you then.